Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the International Conference on Radiation Safety. We will start the session shortly. Before we start, we would like to show you a few logistical and IT tips. As an attendee, you should be automatically connected to the audio. If this is not the case, please go to the tab Audio and Video on the top of your screen and click on Speaker and Microphone Setting to change your audio device and test the settings. We would like to encourage you to ask questions during the session. If you are using a desktop computer, please ask a question using Q&A box located on the bottom of your screen. You can see it in a red box visible now on your screen. Please don't forget to add the name of your country at the beginning of your question. Also, please direct your question to all panelists. If you are using a mobile device, please see the instructions on the screen. Please to remind you to put the country name at the beginning of your question. And now I give over the chair to open the session. Thank you for your attention.
So, good morning, or good afternoon, and good day to everybody around the world, to participants of this very important and relevant, and I would say unique international conference on radiation safety. And again, very warm welcome to the UNSCEAR side event on global survey of public exposure. So this topic is relevant for everybody, not only professionals, but also the public. We have a very dynamic and interesting program. My name is Borislava Batanjeva-Metcalf, and I'm the Secretary of UNSCEAR. And I have the pleasure to introduce my co-chair, Mr. Peter Johnson, Director of the International Atomic Energy Division of Radiation, Transport and Waste Safety. Peter, you have the floor, and welcome.
Thank you, Borislava. My warm welcome to this side event of the IAEA International Conference on Radiation Safety, Improving Radiation Protection in Practice. I add to Borislava's welcome. I'm happy to be involved with this side event, the UNSCEAR Global Survey on Public Exposure. The IAEA, under its mandate, has to establish standards to provide for to establish standards and provide for the application of standards for protection of health. The IAEA consults and collaborates with other international organisations, including UNSCEAR. IAEA serves as a global reference for member states delivering a harmonised high level of safety for protecting people and the environment from the harmful effects of ionising radiation. A number of work programs in NSRW, which is the Division of Radiation Transport and Waste Safety, provide data and information that can be used by member states to support the assessment of public exposures from planned and existing exposure situations. These exposures can arise from both naturally occurring radionuclides in the environment, as well as radionuclides from nuclear installations and from other industries such as uranium mining. The IAEA has a database of discharges of radionuclides to the atmosphere and to the aquatic environment, which is a source of worldwide information and an international reference point for member states and international organizations. The IAEA is committed to updating this database and maintaining it going forward. The IAEA is very pleased to collaborate with UNSCEAR on the collection of data to support their new project to update the UNSCEAR 2008 report on worldwide public exposures from natural and man-made sources, which is a mutual benefit for UN member states. The global survey to be launched by UNSCEAR this year is an important means to collect data from member states, and it is a benefit to both organizations to cooperate on the collection of such data. And with that welcome, I hand back to Borislava.
Thank you very much, Peter, for your opening remarks. So allow me now just to give a brief introduction to this side event. UNSCEAR was established in 1955 by the UN General Assembly with a very clear task to serve as an independent scientific body to advise on sources, effects and mechanisms, including risks from ionizing radiation. This includes public exposure from natural and other sources. The UNSCEAR has been tasked to assess levels, effects and risks. Also, it was asked to identify emerging issues, to improve knowledge and understanding in these fields, and last but not least, to identify areas for future research. The committee was also tasked to disseminate its findings to the UN General Assembly, to its member states and UN member states, the scientific community and the public as a whole. Currently, the UNSCEAR brings together scientists from 27 UN member states, as you could see on the screen, and 4 observers, and these are Algeria, Iran, Norway and UAE. Over the last 65 years, the committee has worked on many areas of radiation science, and one of them is a periodic review of public exposure worldwide. This year, the committee launched, as Peter mentioned, a new evaluation of public exposure to update the latest findings of the committee issued in 2008 UNSCEAR report. So the committee embarked on quite a challenging but extremely interesting journey to evaluate all relevant data and peer-reviewed literature in the period of 15 years. Why 15 years? Because we are aiming to publish the report, the next report in 2024. So the review of the literature will be in the period 2007-2022. This project aims to address all relevant sources of natural and man-made exposure, and also to build on the previous relevant studies, such as lung cancer due to radon exposure, Fukushima and Chernobyl accidents, electricity generation, and others as shown on the screen in red. The UNSCEAR work serves as an independent scientific basis for the development of radiation safety principles and international safety standards, such as the ones developed by the International Atomic Energy Agency, and also regional and national legal frameworks on radiation safety. The scope and data required is vast, particularly for the public exposure, and that's why this project is a joint effort launched by the UNSCEAR, and the success will depend very much on the collaboration and the input from all UN member states, as well as collaboration with other international organizations, and we're very pleased that some of them are here with us today. This aims to avoid undue burdens to member states with respect to collection of data, and we are very happy to hear from you and take this feedback in the launch of the survey at the end of the year. So I'm very pleased, and I will express my deep appreciation to the IA for providing the UNSCEAR and its partners this platform to share with you this project. So the purpose of this event is to present to you the new public exposure project of UNSCEAR. Secondly, to explain the purpose, the scope and the plans of the global survey on public exposure. We plan to launch at the end of this year, and the collection of data is aimed to run in the course of the next year. Thirdly, to explain the use of the UNSCEAR online platform for data collection and analysis, and also to provide an opportunity for you to ask questions. We will do our best to answer all questions, but in case that some questions remain, we'll be happy to share the answers in the course of the next week or so on our website and also on the conference website. And last but not least, for today, we also aim to collect feedback and ideas to how to improve the UNSCEAR online platform and to focus on with the focus on the new UNSCEAR Public Exposure Survey. In order to achieve that, this side event brings together wide expertise and forward-thinking experts and members of the committee bureau, coordinating and lead writers of this project, the UNSCEAR Secretariat, and also international organizations. And in this event, we are very pleased to have with us the International Atomic Energy Agency, the WHO, the European Commission, and Food and Agriculture Organization. I would like to thank all organizations, all partners for this event, for their valuable participation in this initiative. Also in this initiative, I'm very pleased to welcome also a few national contact persons from member states who can have the opportunity to share their own experience and thoughts. My colleague Moritz Zimmermann will support us with the questions and answers and the statistics during this side event. Without further delay, let me introduce the first speaker to this side event, who will inform you about many years of experience of UNSCEAR surveys on medical, occupational, and public exposures. And I have the pleasure to give the floor to Farid Chanoun, who is Acting Deputy Secretary of UNSCEAR, and also the UNSCEAR focal point for data collection on medical, occupational, and public exposure. Farid, you have the floor.
Thank you, Borislava, for the introduction. I will just continue with my presentation, which deals with the surveys UNSCEAR conducted until now. And I would like to give also some practical demonstration of the online platform. As mentioned by Borislava just now, the cooperation with the international organization is one of the major elements of the strategy of the for improving data collection, which was established 2010. You will hear this afternoon about the update of the strategy from the ad hoc working group chair. So I'm just mentioning here the gratitude of UNSCEAR to the cooperation. We just established a new one with the ICAO and a few other organizations like are listed here. Then in my presentation, I would like to highlight the important role of the NCPs, which are the national contact persons who provide the link to member states and who are really the door opener for getting the information from the countries. And last but not least, I will focus within my presentation on the online platform, which was established initially in 2014 for the launch of the medical exposure evaluation, expanded to the occupational in 2016, and will be used now for the public exposure survey, which Borislava just mentioned. Currently, we have officially 90 countries which had presented or nominated a national contact person out of 193. So you can see it positively or additional efforts needed to increase this number. Let me explain the role of the NCP. An NCP is a person which is nominated by a member state and has the task to coordinate the data collection at country level and to coordinate this with the UNSCEAR Secretariat. He or she is cooperating with the technical experts in the country to fill out the UNSCEAR questionnaires, which I will show later. Then submitting the data officially, because UNSCEAR, as you know, is quite formal body and needs to get the information from the countries by official means. And this is then in the hand of the national contact person. The national contact person is also encouraged to provide additional information, supporting material like national reports or data the country has, which are not included in the questionnaire, but which might maybe support the information of the evaluation of the topic. Then the NCP should foster the involvement of member states in UNSCEAR surveys in general by fostering the awareness of the survey in its own country. NCPs and all other experts who provide information to UNSCEAR surveys and evaluations would be acknowledged in the relevant report to the General Assembly. And I think this is just a feedback or a background on the NCP. If everything went good, I still have another slide on this. Yeah, all NCPs are highlighted or listed, not by name, but by organizations on the UNSCEAR website. You have here the link. And on this website, which links also to the online platform, it provides additional information on the NCP and its role. And there are also, as I said, the NCP listed. Let me see if it works. Yeah. Oh, no, it doesn't work. Okay. Where's the pool? Sorry. Okay. After? Okay. Okay. I finished the NCP, so normally we should have the pool now. Okay. Then I continue. I will talk about the online platform, which was established, as I said, initially for the 2016 report, 2014 evaluation on medical exposure. And the platform itself has the task to manage the electronic spreadsheets, the questionnaires. Then it uses for the official submission of the data. And I will go. It's now a little bit abstract, but I will go in detail and show you later the platform itself. The NCPs and the technical experts are required to log into this platform and to be how we say admitted to be able to access it. So it's a kind of secure environment where we can collect the data. When you are on that platform, you would be able only to see the data from your own country, because this is, I think, from data protection point of view, very important that you cannot go through all the country data. You will have only access to your own country information. UNSCEAR, before we extract the data from the platform, we have a quality check process where we import or export the information better from the platform to the database. And I will show you also there is a forum or an area where you can communicate with your national contact persons, like you have an expert group. You can also use the platform for such events. And last but not least, and I think it's also an achievement from technical point of view, to have all the information recorded. So in the future, when you have any updates, you will see your data are still remain on the platform, and you can maybe hand over when you change job or something like that. Here is it, what I'm talking about. The platform with a very simple link, survey.unscear.org. This is the entry page, and before you can use it, as you see in the upper left corner, you have to register yourself. The registration itself is, in fact, a two-part registration. One asking you about email, address, name, and organization, and so on. Please use an email which you are really using, because then the email would be also your how we say, identification for the platform. So there's no username, the email is the username. And the second part of the registration includes what are your role within the survey. So if you got an official nomination as a national contact person, you will be able to click national contact person. And then you can see here there are the different questionnaires or domains of the surveys we have. And most recently, we added the public exposure one. And then there is a question here to avoid any, you say, spam registrations. And when you are registered, it's not said on the slide, but I can tell you it takes some time to get you, let's say, admit or approved in the system. Maybe it could be done in 1 or 2 days, but sometimes maximum 1 or 2 days, let's say. Then you will have access to the platform. And when you have access to the platform, you will get your username, which is your email, plus a password, which is secure, and only you can have it. If you forget your password, there's also the option to reset your password if you use the right email. It's important to know, because then you can only start after this process is done. Once done, you can be updating your profile. Maybe some changes happening. You need another email or another functions. You can change it yourself. And when you log into the system for the first time, you will see here on the right corner that you will be assigned to different surveys. So in my profile here, I'm lucky I have 3 surveys, medical, occupational, and public. So in fact, every national contact person could have access to the specific survey. And when you go further, you click on your survey, which you want to see. Here's an example for Austria now, because UNSCEAR is based in Austria. You will see that the data or the questions are not yet available, but there's a note saying, I cannot read it very well, but it's saying that the questionnaires are coming soon. And on this platform exactly, you will be able to download your questionnaire, and you will be able also to upload it later when you have filled in the questionnaires. And as I said before, here in the lower part of this page, only for your country, you will be able to set some questions. You can send up discussions, and also inform the secretariat or any other experts working on the survey would be use this platform. Here an example, just as an example, from a country where you see that the questionnaires are available. So here were 3 questionnaires from the medical survey. You download these questionnaires and then you upload them again on the same site, and we will get them notified, and then we can import these information. So this is theoretically how the platform works. We have developed for the other 2 surveys a kind of user manual which explain the use of the platform, the data requested, and we are hoping to make such a user manual, I hope, for the public exposure too. That will be then online on this instruction website. At the end of the platform, there is a contact possibility with the secretariat through the platform, which you can indicate the kind of question you have. It's a general question, a survey related, or a technical problem. And if it's a technical problem, we are copying our host of the platform, which is based with a counterpart in Luxembourg. And he will also get the information from if you mail to answersurvey@un.org, and we are getting this information too. So please use this forum, because then we also can improve the platform if you have any feedback on that, and it would be very helpful. Now we are coming to the end, but before I would like to thank you for your attention, I would like to ask you if you could maybe answer these 2 following questions. The first one, are you yourself an UNSCEAR NCP? Yes or no would be fine. And if you are involved in any data collection, which it would be useful for UNSCEAR to know, just to see what is your feedback. The poll is for 2 minutes. Should we wait or should we continue? I don't know how the time limit is now.
We're luckily very much on time. I would like to give you 2 minutes to click either yes or no. And if you allow me just to add that member states could nominate more than 1 NCPs with respect to either medical, occupational, and public exposure. Our idea is that we have 1 channel of communication. If member state prefers to have 2 NCPs, for example, for public exposure for specific area, for example, nuclear fuel cycle and others, it is still possible. The nominations will need to come to the Secretariat through the official channels, as member states were invited through a formal note verbal to the member states. And just for your information, I would like to let you know that we are going to share the presentations after the DECIDE event. So if you don't manage to take your notes or websites, please, you'll have the chance to look at them, study them in more detail after this side event finishes today. So with that, I would like to ask Moritz whether we have some feedback or we need some time. What?
Results are there.
The results are there?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I
Is it
announce
possible
them?
to share? Okay, maybe.
You want to announce? Can you share them, or should I?
Can we
announce
share them on the screen, or?
Yeah. So we are lucky, having 18% yes, they are NCPs, and we have another 30% who are maybe not NCPs but are involved in data collection in their country. Thank you for that. I will go to the next slide then and say thank you for your participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Farid. I would like to mention and to recall that you're very warmly invited to pose any questions using the QA box. I think it's on the screen. And then we will take those questions just before the break today. So now let me invite the coordinating lead writer of the UNSCEAR project, Evaluation of Public Exposure to Ionizing Radiation from Natural and Man-Made Sources, Mr. Michael Balanov, Chief Research Scientist at the Research Institute of Radiation Hygiene in St. Petersburg, the Russian Federation. Michael is a professor in radiobiology and has more than 40 years of experience in the field of radiation science and protection, the IEA, and assessments of radiological consequences from the Chernobyl and Fukushima Daiichi accidents. So, Michael, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear colleagues, I want to introduce you the substance of the project UNSCEAR initiative this year, focused on the evaluation of man-made sources of radiation. The story begins from UNSCEAR mandate, which reads, UNSCEAR assesses global levels and effects of ionizing radiation. This project is about global levels of public exposure. From my personal point of view, UNSCEAR reports are more solid data sources of exposure levels of the general public to ionizing radiation. And I'm sure that many of you use this solid source of information. It's not a new type of project. It's actually a follow-up of the previous projects from which the UNSCEAR 2008 report was the most, the latest one. But before there was projects from 2000, 1993, 1980, and so on. So it's a long story of this kind of activity. More generally, the project is based on a part of UNSCEAR's global radiation exposure surveys established in 2013, and you were already demonstrated which part of that survey our project is. The project title, formal project title is here. Its aim is, the project aim, to review the latest scientific evidence and literature regarding exposure of the public to ionizing radiation from natural and man-made sources and prepare an update to the UNSCEAR 2008 report. Pretty wide area of activity. There are, of course, specific objectives, and we developed structure of the future report, but I don't want to spend your time looking at that. If you participate in the project in any way, you can find this information on the UNSCEAR site or receive it from Secretariat. The project duration is, for now, planned actually in total 5 years, starting this year and ending 2024. What are the main evaluation subjects and relevant working subgroups? We created already several working subgroups for the following evaluation subjects. The first important point is radon and its daughters, doses, concentration, and so on. The group is led by Dr. Wolfgang Ringer from Austria, very experienced person in this area. The next working subgroup is on naturally occurring radioactive materials except radon. And this is led by Juan Carlos Mora from Spain. Very important part of our project is discharges of nuclear industry. This is led by Mr. Tiberio Cabianca from the UK, and we will execute this part of the project in close collaboration with IAEA, especially Project Dirata. Joe Brown is the responsible person for this part of activities. Another evaluation subject and working group is spent nuclear fuel and waste management. Responsible lead writer is Carol Robinson, representing Norway. Relatively small subgroup is other application of radiation sources, like, let's say, discharges from nuclear medicine facilities and some other minor sources. This minor group is led by Dr. Vladimir Berkovsky from Ukraine. And an important part is legacy sites, which includes former nuclear weapons test site, production sites, sites of former nuclear and radiological accidents, and the relatively large working group will be led jointly by myself and Vladimir Berkovsky from Ukraine. In order to run this project, we first of all should to resolve some key technical issues, and the first of them is define scope and methodology for dose assessment by each subgroup. You understand nature of human exposure in different of these evaluation subjects and working is different. We need several different dose methodologies. Now the groups and practical out from this, so questionnaires states date survey, so they should be formulated professionally, I mean precisely, and not to be too large in order to be manageable for member states. First of all, we are able to manage any amount of data, but for member states it's additional burden, and we don't forget that. A special group and special subject is quality assurance and the issue of uncertainties. This is actually one more subgroup led by Helen Grogan from the USA. Now, what we have already done in 2020 after the start of the project, we formed the expert group in total, and all these subgroups. In total, we have now 36 persons involved from 17 member states and 4 international organizations. That includes both experts and observers. It's not the end of formation. We need more experts in some subgroups, especially subgroups on other applications and legacy sites, and we will still search for additional experts in this area. We reviewed those assessment methodologies, and we are going to complete that activity by the end of this month. Questionnaires for member state survey being updated. I will show you some simple examples a bit later. And we already conducted one step of training for literature review. Maybe one more is necessary. We developed template for each subgroup for scope and general methodology. It's internal document to identify these things for ourselves, to be clear what we are going to do and so on. But partially it includes production of questionnaires for member states. So this document for each subgroup includes scope, which means define radionuclides and radiation you are dealing with, define exposed population groups and exposure pathways. That's important point. Next, which environmental measurements focused on human environment will be used in this project for presentation of data in general terms and for dose assessment. And that includes, depending on the subgroup, of course, that might include radionuclide releases, air dose rate on site, activity concentration in soil, in drinking water, in foods, and so on. So it defines what you are going to use as measurement data. Then, basic methodology for assessment of effective dose put to the public. As much as possible, we rely on the methodologies already developed by UNSCEAR in the past. Most of our tasks will be covered by the existing methodologies, and this is a kind of follow-up in UNSCEAR activities from, let's say, from 2000, 2008, and not only. There were some more projects, for instance, an UNSCEAR report published in 2016 on assessment of doses from radioactive discharges, and we will use these methodologies as much as possible here, possibly with some updates, because our area is developing science and new data emerging, and they will be included, of course, in our methodologies. Then we are going to present in this document scope and methodology, we are presenting format of data presentation in the future report, in the report under development, because in different subgroups, data are different, and of course, format of presentations is also different. Then, some specifics of literature review, which is very important part of this project, which the project includes actually two genres. One is literature review, and in the document scope methodology, we formulate topical areas for each subgroup and keywords for search, screening questions, and quality questions. So we are now in the stage of completion of that documents, of these documents by each subgroup, and we hope that by December it will be ready for use. And the last but not the least, it's survey of UN member states. From the scope and general methodology for each subgroup, we derive format of questionnaires for member states, which includes all what kind of data should be presented, in which format, quality criteria, and we also think about data processing and analysis. So this is what we are actually doing in this project. This is a simple example of a questionnaire regarding radon in air. That will include title of the survey project or just the site, then period when data were collected, number of measurements, and percentage of concentrations above well-known reference concentration of 300 becquerel per cubic meter. And numbers of concentrations measured will include arithmetic mean, geometric mean, median, geometric standard deviation for outdoors and especially for indoors measurements and references, of course. The radon group developed similar questions for thoron in air and for radon in drinking water. I will not demonstrate, they are pretty similar. What else have we done? I will show you on the next slide. Now, norm, natural radionuclides. That includes cosmic rays, dose rate, and energy spectra. It's not trivial because to measure dose rate from cosmic rays, it's a quite special task. We don't think these quantities are significantly changing in time, not of course, but some more data emerge, and it's very important to involve them in our presentation and dose assessment. This is relevant both to cosmic rays and to cosmogenic radionuclides measured in air at ground level. In this case, the data which will be collected, it's air concentration of the cosmogenic radionuclides. Even more important is assessment of activities from norm industries. We need a list of industries from each country, number of industries of different kind. We will request for this survey the data of concentration of norm in soil, raw material, waste, air, drinking water, discharges of norm from particular facilities, and some other data. We will also ask for the data produced by the countries about annual effective dose to member of the public and compare them with our own estimates. But important point is, of course, national data, which will be included in the report. Similar questionnaires are being developed or partially developed already for nuclear industry, for instance. Focus for nuclear industry, it's focused on discharges of man-made radionuclides, and the questionnaire and the scope and scope methodology document is currently under development. For legacy sites, contaminated with long-lived radionuclides from activities, former activities, past activities, and accidents. We will ask for the site name, location, square, of course. We will ask for some clarification, some information about origin and nature of radioactive contamination of that site, what radionuclides are in soil, and some quantitative information like mass density or concentration, becquerel per kilo, and surface density, surface deposition, becquerel per square meter. And we will ask, of course, for national data, estimated characteristics of current public exposure, dose rate, annual dose. Maybe we will involve in this assessment our own assessment of the dose. We will see what kind of data we receive from the member states. Where are we now? Now we're completing these documents I mentioned, internal documents on scope and methodologies and relevant questionnaires for each subgroup. The intention is to complete them by the end of this month, actually. It's, it's difficult year, but we are doing our job, and I hope that we will manage to start literature review and the member state survey by means of questionnaire distribution by the end of this year. So, in fact, in December. We have already got 90 national contact points from member states, and all of them and national experts are encouraged to participate actively in this project. We expect for further NCP nomination from other countries. And this completes my presentation. Thank you for your attention, and please ask your questions, and we will answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael, for this very comprehensive overview of the project. And now we can see you, because we couldn't see you, but now the participants could also see you as well. Thank you. As you said, questions are very welcome to be posted on the Q&A box, and we will address them at about 12:50 or even early if we finish a little bit early, but before the lunch break, we're all together. And then also we have a Q&A session in the afternoon, so we will address as many questions as we can. So now I would like to invite Ms. Jo Brown, Unit Head of Assessment and Management of Environmental Releases at the IAEA. Jo has a very extensive experience with over 35 years in radiation protection in the areas of health risk assessment and development of public health guidance and advice on radiation protection issues. This includes drinking water and radioactive contaminated land, and she works very, very closely with us, and she is working, and hopefully we'll continue this collaboration on this project and other initiatives in the future. So, Jo, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I'd like to extend my welcome to all participants attending this session. I'm going to give you a short presentation of some of the IEA's activities on public exposure and those which are of particular relevance, I think, to our collaboration with UNSCEAR on the public exposure review and data collection to support this review. As we have heard, UNSCEAR produce scientific reports on the effects of radiation, and they're independent, so it provides an independent scientific basis. And these feed into recommendations for radiation protection and principles, such predominantly the ICRP recommendations. And these in turn are used by the IAEA in developing its safety standards for protection of health and to minimize the danger to life and property from radiation. Thank you, Fareed. So one of the key safety standards the IEA has are what are known as the basic safety standards for radiation protection and safety of radiation sources, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And these provide the key safety requirements for radiation safety for all facilities and activities involving radioactivity, and covers all the exposure situations, whether it's planned exposures from facilities or emergency situations, and also existing exposure situations with radioactivity. It covers all categories of exposure, both for workers, patients, public, and also the environment, and addresses, really quite importantly, and particularly for the remit of the public exposure review for UNSCEAR, it covers both naturally occurring radionuclides and man-made radionuclides. Thank you, Fareed. So I'm just going to highlight some of the information we have in the agency that we collect and the projects that we're undertaking, as I said, that I think will be very useful and in our collaboration with UNSCEAR. We compile quite a lot of data to support radiological impact assessment. So this is the assessment of exposures and doses from radioactivity, radionuclides in the environment. And you can see here, very recently, we have published a report on environmental transfer of radionuclides in Japan following the accident at Fukushima. And this was carried out under a program which I will talk a little bit about later. But this has a lot of information, largely on transfer of radionuclides in the environment, but also some information which can support the approach and methodology used within the UNSCEAR public exposure review. We also publish handbooks of parameter values on transfer and radionuclide and other data to be used in radiological impact assessment. Thank you, Fareed. One of the projects that's been worked on in the division is to try and provide some harmonized guidance for radionuclides in food and drinking water for existing exposure situations. It's been recognized that there are a number of standards that, like, for example, I've listed here the standards by Codex, the WHO guidelines for drinking water quality, and the IEA basic safety standards. These criteria for drinking water, radionuclides in drinking water and food, are different, and it's been recognized that we should be working together to harmonize some guidance on how do you consider radionuclides in food and drinking water against the various criteria and needs from the basic safety standards. And this specifically includes naturally occurring radionuclides, and this is where there's a lot of useful information being collected that can be of use for the UNSCEAR review. Next slide, please. And just to show what some of those components of the project are, the agency has compiled and evaluated data from a large number of peer-reviewed papers and literature from data from member states on activity concentrations of naturally occurring radionuclides in food, covering the period from 1998 to 2017. And many of you will be aware that UNSCEAR have published reference values for concentrations of naturally occurring radionuclides in food. as well. So we can work together with this new compilation of data. We've also compiled concentrations of naturally radionuclides in natural mineral waters, concentrations of radionuclides in wild foods, and also we have looked at doses from all radionuclides from total diet. So these are doses that people have calculated from measuring radionuclides in the total diet that people consume. Next slide, please, Fruit. Okay. Another area where the agency does a lot of work, and particularly in collaboration with WHO, is on providing guidance and standards on public exposure from radon. And as you will have heard from the earlier presentations, there is a working group under the UNSCEAR public exposure review study looking at radon. And we would hope from the experience of the agency and the information that the agency has that we can support and collaborate with that working group. Next slide, please. And just for information, which many of you will be aware, but there has been a lot of information, webinars, training material, and videos produced on radon by the IEA, which are all accessible through the agency's website, where again, there's a lot of information, not just on guidance on how to assess and manage radon in the environment, but also useful information for different exposure situations. Thanks, Fareed. I'd next like to move on to the IEA DARATA database, which Mikhail mentioned in his presentation. DARATA is the IEA's database on discharges of radionuclides to atmosphere and the aquatic environment. And it's a database for the IEA's member states, and it provides a source of worldwide information and an international reference point on discharges to the environment, both for member states to use and also international organizations. And it also provides member states with a technical means of reporting and reviewing discharges within the framework of the Joint Convention on the Safety of Spent Fuel Management and Radioactive Waste Management. Thanks for it. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what does DARATA contain? It's a database that contains annual discharge records submitted on a voluntary basis by the IEA member states. It also includes historical discharge records, some collected by UNSCEAR, European Commission, and other international and national organizations. And it currently contains discharge data from 1947 to 2012. So the question you're probably asking is, why only till 2012? And I'll come to that in a minute. Next slide, please. So this is just a snapshot slide of what the database currently looks like if you enter it in terms of the sites and then where we have discharge data. And you can see currently there's 30 sites for 33 member states who've provided data. It's mainly nuclear power plants, but also some research reactors, waste management facilities, and other sites. And you as a user, you can access it by searching for atmospheric discharges, different types of radionuclides, and also for the aquatic environment. Thanks, Fareed. Okay. So, our plans moving forward, as you saw, there's no data in for 2012, and that's for a number of reasons which I won't go into today, but it has been agreed that IEA will update and maintain DARATA database moving forward. So we're currently reviewing the database to ensure it's current, complete, and particularly important, accessible and easy to use by member states, inputting the data, but also to users that want to use it. And we're collaborating with UNSCEAR and others to collect the data. And this is a really important collaboration for this public exposure review study. We're very aware that the discharge data needs to be useful to all the interested parties and also appropriate for dose assessment, which is one of the reasons that we want the database in the agency, but also it's useful for UNSCEAR as well. And our plan is to update and complete the database in the sort of 2021 to 2022 time frame. Thanks, Fareed. Finally, I'd like to talk to you about a program that we run in the Radiation Transport and Waste Safety Division on modeling and data for environmental radiological impact assessment. And many of you may have heard about the most recent program, which has been called Madaria. Environmental assessment models are used to evaluate the radiological impact of releases of radionuclides to the environment, both from past and potential future practices and also accidental releases. These models are essential tools for regulatory control of discharge to the environment and for radiological impact assessments and for calculating exposures, such as being done under the UNSCEAR project, and for humans and non-human biota. And one of the emphases in the last few years has been to find robust and appropriate approaches for assessing exposures to non-human biota. And the IEA began supporting environmental assessment activities in this framework back in the 1980s and have had a series of programs, as you can see listed below, which maybe some of you have been involved with over the years. Next slide, please. So the whole objective of these programs is to improve our capabilities and improve the capabilities in member states in the field of environmental transfer of radionuclides to the public and the doses to the public and non-human biota. And we do that by acquiring data and also improving the models that we have for assessing exposures. And we improve the models by doing a lot of testing and comparison of different models, and reaching consensus on modeling philosophies, approaches, and also the parameter values that are used, so that we can build an international forum for the exchange of information and work together and support member states. And you can see this is just a picture of some of the working groups that were in the Madaria program. Okay, next slide, please. And I just thought this was an interesting slide, maybe of relevance for the UNSCEAR, particularly of relevance to the UNSCEAR project, which is a working group that have looked at transfer processes and data for radiological impact assessment, covering things like the distribution of radionuclides between sediments and soils and water, for example, in different environments. The subgroup that we have just seen the tech doc of on the previous slide, which was a compilation of data, particularly for radiocesium, but not just radiocesium, in Japan following the Fukushima accident, and how that has provided us with a lot of additional data, and whether that supports the data we had beforehand or whether there's new information. And also there's a group looking at particularly data appropriate for non-temperate systems, so arid, semi-arid and tropical areas. And because most of our data has been for the temperate, historically been for temperate environments. Okay, next slide, please. I think that's me. So thank you very much for your kind attention, and I look forward to taking part in the rest of the side event today, and obviously answering any questions you have later. Thank you.
Thank you, Jo. And I would like to thank all the presenters this morning, because now we come to the most interesting part of the morning session, which is questions and answers. And I'm very pleased that, at least I'm advised that we have quite a large interest, and the questions will be shown on the screen. Let's start with a few. I would propose to start with the few that at least I glanced briefly, I could admit. The first ones are about how to become an NCP. And I'll just answer this question, and then, because it's more introductory one. The UNSCEAR Secretariat invites all UN member states, not only its own committee member states, via note verbal to the permanent missions in Vienna. And then member states are usually given about 2 to 3 months to nominate NCPs. And the responses, the nominations come through the official channel with a letter to the Secretariat And then we take it up for it as a national contact, as a national contact person for the Secretariat, then provides all the detailed information on a technical level. So if I would say the current list on the website of the UNSCEAR will be updated in the course of the next week to make sure that all 90 NCPs are clearly listed in terms of a country and organization. And then you could see your national contact organization, and then you can follow up on a local level. But if you see that there's no nominated NCP, I would really use the opportunity and strongly encourage you to follow through the permanent mission in Vienna or through your regulatory body the nomination of a new NCP. Yet in some cases, it's preferred you could have more than one. So this is the first question. So the question about, let's take the second question. Are regulatory authorities also NCPs, also members of the committee? And I would like just to pass this question to Farid, for example.
Thank you, Slava. I think the question is asking about the membership to UNSCEAR, if I understand correctly. Yes. But I think for sure there are members of regulatory authorities represented in some countries as the representatives. But for the NCPs, I don't know by heart, but I think the majority of the NCPs are really from regulatory authorities who have the access to the data or can at least coordinate in the country the data collection. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think that it's a mixture. The committee, if I can compliment for it, is a mixture between scientists, but also it also involves regulatory bodies. It depends on the country's capacities, data collection or information, and how they can contribute to the committee. So it also differs from session to session. When we invite states members of the committee for each individual session, they're flexible to nominate experts for each individual session based on the topic of the documents that we discuss. Okay, I think I have a question. Maybe we can pass it to Michael. If Michael, you're there. This is more related to what type of information, for example, are grant activities cited in our projects, and what type of information the UNSCEAR committee and the expert groups use in their evaluations. I'm just combining a few questions that I saw later on. So the type of information, Michael, we use to evaluate, for example, in this case, the public exposure.
Yeah, thanks. So the UNSCEAR tradition to analyze published literature is mostly focused on the papers published in the peer-reviewed journals. So actually the UNSCEAR standards for the quality of scientific information to be used in UNSCEAR reports are very strong, and this is why peer-reviewed journals are definitely the priority. However, in some cases, not all the information is published in the journals. We also rely on the governmental reports, which is in most of countries is very reliable source of information. And in case of a survey of member states, we will rely on information submitted by member states during this global survey. Some other publications, like papers from conferences and so on, can be also considered, but usually they are considered as a secondary source of information. I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And may I ask you just also to elaborate on the question from Godwin Ekong from Nigeria about the criteria for the member state selection? Because the comment was that in your presentation you did not cover Nigeria, so... I would
Okay.
say the starting point is probably that, first of all, we cover all member states. There's no exclusion, but if you can elaborate on the criteria for the member state selection. Thank you.
In fact, there are no special criteria. The note verbal of the UNSCEAR was distributed to all member states of the United Nations, as far as I know. So far, we have 19 NCP, but we expect for more, without any restrictions, criteria, and so on. Maybe you're asking about the subgroups working on particular subjects for analysis. In this case, again, the countries present their experts to UNSCEAR, and from this list we collect, we create our working groups. As for leading writers for these working group, we selected most experienced people who have good record of published papers in this area, environmental radioactivity, and so on. So, in other words, everybody is invited. Please apply to your regulatory body and become a part of this activity. You are very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. I see that the question was not only about the coverage and the scope. Definitely the project covers all member states. How to be part of this project? The normal process is that an expert scientist can be nominated through the representative of the committee. If a member state is not part of the committee membership, then it can be done through I'm a state member or international organization. This nomination could reach us, the secretariat, with the CV of the expert. Then the secretariat evaluates that nomination, and also after the endorsement of the bureau of the committee, then this person could participate, the scientist could participate in a project. We already have a couple of examples that we're working with experts, I think from Italy, Singapore, in general I'm talking, but in this project we have Austria participates in this project, and we are happy to work with experts who can contribute in practice in this project. If you have any questions, please just drop us an email and we can follow up. But this is the normal process. It's not very complicated. It just needs to follow already a procedure set by the committee and the secretariat. Thank you. Michael, maybe you could also elaborate on whether independent universities who are already doing research, whether their work could be taken into account in the project. The question from Safa Murad from Lebanon.
Yeah, thank you for the question. As I already mentioned in the previous intervention, so the criteria is not actually the organization, it's more quality of the paper. If it's published in the peer-reviewed journal, which means it meets the requirement of the modern science, why not? So we will be happy to consider all of them, and then to use to extent possible, but it's important point to publish it in the peer-reviewed journal. Thank you.
What I could also, thank you, Michael, I could propose is that if you feel that there's very relevant published literature since 2007, you can also send it to our official email, which is unscare@un.org, and we will pass it through the expert group. To Sergio's question from Italy about occupational exposure, I will just maybe give the floor to Farid to brief you where we are in general terms, because it's not exactly the topic of our event. But Farid, can you just brief on where the ongoing project is at the moment on occupation? Thank you.
Thank you, Borislava. Yeah, as you mentioned, the occupational evaluation is just undergoing and it's planned to be finalized by 2021. For that project, we also collected information through the survey platform and from member states. And just let me emphasize also, we reviewed the literature. I think it's a very important point, which was maybe not highlighted enough today in my presentation, because we were talking about the data collection, but the evaluation of the literature is really one major component of all UNSCEAR evaluations, which we are conducting. And as Borislava just mentioned, it would be good if you can give us some information about the new published literature. However, we are also going through search machines and have a strong process for evaluating the literature. I hope I answered the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Farid. Michael, would you like to take the question of Marie Comperot about whether the project will cover normal levels or also high levels of exposure? Can you see that on the screen? So is our study aimed specifically for areas of normal levels of exposure, or are we going to cover also known high levels of radioactivity?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I would like to start with some additional information for what Farid has just commented on the epidemiological studies. The general approach is that when epidemiology is considered, epidemiological effects are considered in the epidemiological studies, we take into account all the doses. So for each person, all the components of dose, and from that we intend to derive effect from artificial radionuclides usually, but not only artificial. There is a lot of studies on radon epidemiology, and this is directly exposure from natural radionuclides. And there are also studies of epidemiological studies from other radionuclides, mostly from areas with elevated radioactivity. So this is to complete the comments on the previous topic, and your particular question was on are we going to consider both effects, both doses in the areas with normal radioactivity and with elevated? Both, of course. So we will present data from areas with temperate levels of radiation, and especially from areas with elevated natural radioactivity, like some areas in China, India, Iran, and so on, and also from areas with elevated artificial radioactivity, like areas of the former nuclear accidents, like Chernobyl, Fukushima, and so on. But not the early part of the event, like not from Fukushima in 2011, but future long-term effects for the areas with elevated level of radioactivity. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And now I just need to apologize because I assume that you see the questions, but I'm reminded that only we see the questions here, and I'll read them in the future. There is one question from Haridasan Papiniseri regarding the IAEA presentation. I'll read it out. There's a lot of data on norm available in IAEA safety report series number 34, 51, 68, 76, 78, and 100. So extensive work done by the IAEA. So the question is, the committee, or maybe it's more a statement, the committee may wish to review and include these. So I would like to give the floor to Joe, but in general, the committee reviews any peer-reviewed literature, including relevant IAEA reports. So, Joe.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Harry, for pointing that out. Yes, I apologize that maybe I should have included norm a little bit more in my presentation. But I think I just want to emphasize that the agency, and particularly the division that Harry and I both work in, the Radiation Transport and Waste Safety Division, that we are going to collaborate with UNSCEAR in all areas of public exposure that we work on, both in supporting them with the approach to the methodology used within the public exposure review, and also any data that will help them in terms of their assessment. But thank you, Harry, for actually pointing that out in more detail. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have one more question for Joe and the IEA. Is there any program planned in the near future for the continuation of a series of IEA projects such as MRAS, Modaria, that were very useful to countries? So, Joe.
Thank you, Victoria. The short answer to your question is yes. We've had as you know, the Modaria program finished last autumn in 2019, and we've been having a planning and consolidation year this year. So the plan is to have a new program that will start in 2021, and so watch this space, because more details will be coming out of what that is going to look like. But thank you for your question. This is a very important activity for the agency, and we will continue to support member states through this international forum and ability for people from member states to meet and discuss data, modelling approaches and models, and work with each other. But thank you for your question.
We have one question about the possibility of UNSCEAR and Almere laboratories to work together, and how UNSCEAR can work with national laboratories to ensure reliability of results. But I think it's more a question for the IEA, because IEA does more practical work, networking between different laboratories. Joe, do you want to elaborate a little bit on that? Or, but at the moment, UNSCEAR is not working with laboratories and doing any practical work. It's more performing data collection, analysis of data, and assessment of radiological consequences from normal and accidental conditions. May I take also the other question from Safa Mourad from Lebanon? I would read the question. Would UNSCEAR, as part of this project, consider offering funds to initiate projects for monitoring public radiation exposures from natural sources? And the answer will be no, because this is not in terms of our mandate to fund national projects, but any other international organizations. I don't know whether IEA has a technical cooperation program, but for UNSCEAR at the moment, the answer is no. I don't know whether, Joe, you would like to add any TC projects that you have in general in terms of monitoring exposures in member states. Thank you.
Thank you. As Borislava has said, the agency has a technical cooperation program in which the agency works with countries on a number of projects, both national projects and regional projects, to support the application of the safety standards and to work within those countries. And that could, obviously, depending on the project and the project design that's agreed, include monitoring of public radiation exposures from natural sources, or at least assessing data to allow those exposures to be assessed. I'm not aware of any specific ones, but in principle, the agency would support projects of that nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. So I would like to thank all participants for their active participation, for listening to us, and also asking such a useful questions, and we'll be more than happy to continue that conversation at 1:30 Vienna time. And with that, I would invite you to remain connected. Have a nice lunch break, and see you in about exactly 40 minutes. Thank you.